irresistible force meeting the immovable object. Look at this. He slammed him. I don't believe it.
Moments that resound through the ages.
Champion against champion, title for title. This is what it's all about.
An event that captivates the heart of an entire world. This is a night that carries us back to the enchanting world of our youth. A spectacle that rejuvenates our spirit. Welcome to Wrestlemania, the showcase of the immortals.
It doesn't get any bigger or more exciting than this. Tonight, heroes will be made and careers and lives shaped forever.
Welcome to Wrestlemania, a celebration of life.
Welcome to Wrestlemania.
Go ahead, pop off, me and my clique put on. I'm like a young McMahon, I'm here to get your bitch off. Like I'm Ric Flair, little finger to the big boss. Man, aka police, guess I'm over your head like hit toss.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to episode 8 of the Middle-Aged Outlaws podcast. I'm Ross, and I'm here as always with Adam. Adam, how's it going?
Yeah, not bad. You?
I'm good, thanks. I've got WrestleMania fever after watching all these this kind of trip down nostalgia lane. It's been great fun.
Yeah, it has.
So our plan, as we spoke about at the end of our last podcast, after our brains were scrambled trying to rebook the invasion, was to look at the WrestleManias. We're going to do a little WrestleMania themed few episodes before WrestleMania 37. So we have been looking at WrestleManias from the 80s and the 90s, and we're going to rank our top 5 of those. So first WrestleMania was in 1985. So we've had 15 to choose from. How's it been for you to come up with a top 5?
I think, like most things, there were a couple that sprang to mind straight away. There were actually a couple of disappointments in there that you sort of look back and think, oh, that'll have been good, I'll give that a watch, and then didn't really measure up to what you thought or what you remembered. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of found, like, my fandom is kind of split into a couple of categories here, because I lost a little bit of interest probably after 10 up till about 14. So I think you do always look back to what you enjoyed at the time. And equally the really early ones, so anything before 5 really, I saw them, but I was playing catch up. I hadn't seen them anywhere near the time they were on or anything like that. And I think the first video that I bought of a Mania was 5, so that one still has fond memories, and anything before felt quite old in comparison. Yeah,
I'm the same, but with WrestleMania 6, I want to say that I can close my eyes and see the cover of that video, no problem at all. I feel the same. So 6 is probably my first Mania that I've got fond memories of, and go forward to 9, and then probably 15. And in retrospect, I went back and watched 14. But do you know? I don't think I'm doing any spoilers here, making any spoilers by saying that 9 didn't make my top 5. I remember absolutely cherishing the VHS that I had of WrestleMania 9. I absolutely loved it as a kid. But yeah, no, it's not making any top. Well, there's 15 WrestleMania. It's probably not making the top 16.
Yeah, it's
really bad.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't need to rewatch that one. I just kind of knew. And I was so annoyed at the time by the ending that it kind of would have ruined everything before it for me anyway.
Aye. It does have some okay matches in it. But aye, Hogan was Black Eye. The irony. Anyway, shall we jump right in?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Cool. I'm intrigued to see what you've got for me here. I think you've told me that 5's going to be in there, but I'm intrigued to see what you've got and how different our picks are and stuff. So go for it. What's your 5?
Okay, so I was talking to you earlier about the fact that I was struggling to get some of them in an order, but this one fell quite easily because it was the last one I kind of decided to put in here, and beforehand I don't think I would have thought this would have been on my list, so I've surprised myself a little bit with it.
Okay.
So my number 5 is WrestleMania 7.
Okay.
Now, I'll just mention the fact I didn't love the main event, and that was, it was Hogan
Slaughter.
against Slaughter.
Is that
yeah.
right?
And I don't know if it's again, the years of my fandom, I didn't see Slaughter on that level, so it felt like a bit of a, cheap main event, because I suppose many Hogan ones were the same, but I went into it with absolutely no doubt who would win, and I just didn't see them as being on a par. So I didn't love the main event, and when I actually looked below that, that's when I realised that actually this is one I needed to look at. So, struggling to remember beforehand what particular Mania some of my favourite matches were on, but the standout for me on this was the Macho Man Ultimate Warrior, which was the retirement match. And I think we're probably similar in terms of fandom, that, Savage and Warrior were there, when we were kids, when we were watching, and they were always, pretty near the top of the card. They were big stars. And Savage had gone heel for, the Hogan programme back at Mania 5, and he'd kind of been a heel ever since, and then in the build-up to this, he'd cost Warrior the title when they put it on Slaughter at the Royal Rumble. And they have this match that's supposed to be a retirement match, but we all know how retirement matches go in wrestling. But it was really heated, really well-told story. And they go through, he's overacting it a bit, he's hamming it up a bit, but they go through this, does Warrior actually still want to do this? Or does he want to just walk away? And that Savage drops, I think it's 4 or 5 elbow drops from the top rope, and then Warrior kicks out and then goes through his finishing manoeuvre with the introduction of some, I don't know what to call them, like running shoulder blocks.
Yeah, it bounces off the rope, kind of like
yeah,
bounces in there off the ropes.
Yeah, delivers a hell of a lot of those, and then the press slamming and the splash and all that, and covers Savage with just a foot on the chest, and that's after he'd kicked out of the 5 elbow drops. So as a kid, I'm watching this and I'm absolutely loving it. I'm thinking it's amazing. I didn't really care at the time about the fact Warrior, you can tell he's a bit limited, but they actually perform a really good match. I've no doubt Savage was behind most of that, but I just thought that was a real, top tier match, and kind of made up for the fact that I didn't see the main event as a main event. Because those two were main event performers in my eyes. So that match was what made me think, right, I need to actually go and have a look at the card on this. And then I remembered this was also the Mania that had a match we've discussed before, Jake Roberts, Rick Martel blindfold match.
Yes. See, I've not got 7 on my list, but if I did, it would be because of that.
And it's, we've talked previously about, I think it was on our Finishing Move podcast, it's just a really different, hardly anything happens in the match, but it's kind of gripping at the same time. And again, as a youngster watching it, absolutely loved it. There's a Undertaker, I think, WrestleMania debut. He'd been at Survivor Series the year before, but he is up against Jimmy Snuka, and they're kind of building Undertaker as the monster heel, and he, disposes of Snuka pretty easily. There's also a pretty good match between Bossman and Mr. Perfect, which I've got memories again that we've talked about
We spoke
before.
about that before, and we're talking about the Intercontinental Championship.
Yes, that's right.
That was a
Yeah,
good match. I remember going back and watching that
yeah.
at that time.
And there's some other nice like LOD appear on this Mania, and always a team, I think, for me anyway, more associated with WCW than WWF, and one of those that you kind of heard about, but I hadn't seen much of them or anything like that. There's also a Rockers against Haku and Barbarian match, which is, you know, the High Flyers against big powerhouses. So yeah, it's
You've got Nasty Boys, the Heart Foundation there as well.
yeah, and
I don't know if that's any good. I'm just looking down the card.
I think it just annoyed me a bit that the Nasty Boys won it. But I remember being just irritated by that. Yeah, it's one of those, and I think you mentioned this when you messaged me about certain manias where the card's huge. You know, there's a lot of matches on here, and some of them get hardly any time and things like that. And there's a match that I think it's Bulldog against Warlord, who are just these ridiculously, almost grotesque, jacked-looking guys, where it looks like if you went in with a pin, you could just deflate both of the performers. But you know, I just felt that it was one that sort of flew under the radar in my mind because I didn't like the main event, but when I actually looked into it, I really enjoyed the show.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I enjoy that Mania as well. Just didn't make the cut for me, but there's definitely good things about it. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, the only other thing I was going to mention was there's the sort of climax or the conclusion of the Virgil Ted DiBiase story on this. And, you know, Ted DiBiase, very good performer over the years. Virgil had been his, I don't know, was he his servant? And
Best not go into that, like.
and this was him finally, you know, standing up to him and giving him his comeuppance with all the promptings of Roddy Piper. And now when I look and I just see Virgil as this guy who couldn't really perform, he had a good look, but
What do you mean? He's a world-class boxer.
but I remember again as a kid, I really liked the fact that this guy finally stood up and, you know, stood up for himself and things like that. So yeah, just one more thing that sort of ticked a box as a kid. And the last thing that I was going to mention about, and I don't know, I can't remember what Mania 6 had, but the commentary team being Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan.
Nice.
And the commentary team can have such an important part in what the Mania is like. And they were one of my favourite double acts, so really enjoyed their sort of banter and picking at each other and winding each other up through the show.
Will you stop? Absolutely. That's one. That is one of the things I think, especially a WrestleMania, makes a WrestleMania is the commentators.
Yeah.
It's been interesting watching through them and seeing the different pairings that we've had. Yeah. Is that your pick then? WrestleMania 7 for number 5?
Yep, that's my pick.
Cool. My number 5, which I'll be interested to see if you've got on your list, is WrestleMania 6.
Yeah, this was the one I ruled out earlier.
Oh, was it?
Yep.
Straight off the bat?
Yeah, no, it was... I decided not to
you
go
disappeared there for a little second.
All right, sorry.
I didn't get why you ruled it out, sorry.
I just, when I look back through the card, you know, I loved the top line match as a kid. I thought it was amazing and the 2 stars really at the time, but what fell under it didn't grab me as much as some of the others did. I do think there's some good stuff on it, it just didn't quite grab me in as much as the others.
Okay, cool. Let's start at the top. We've got the Ultimate Challenge, Intercontinental Champion against WWF Champion, Hogan versus Warrior, which was really interesting to go back and watch. Like, as a kid, I've got memories of it just being this ridiculous, amazing spectacle, an event, and going back and watching it, it's weird because I feel kind of conflicted about it. If you put the cynical hat to the side and just watch it for what it is, it's brilliant. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Looking at it from another lens, I think there's one wrestling move that you class as a wrestling move. At one point, Ultimate Warrior suplexes Hogan. With the exception of that, it's clotheslines, test of strength, a bear hug. I mean, they're padding this out. It's 24 minutes. They're padding this out, but the crowd are going mental for it.
Yeah.
They're absolutely loving it. There's the classic, the crisscrossing, bouncing off the ropes, which I have no idea why they started doing that. Doesn't make sense at all, but it looks cool. The build up to this, like at WrestleMania 6 and some of the WrestleManias earlier than this as well, I think, they come out on the little rings that take them out that bring them out to the ring.
Yeah.
Whereas you got Warrior sprinting down and you got Hogan walking out, and all of it is just a massive spectacle. And like I say, put the cynical sort of like, what are they doing, sort of hat to the side and just enjoy it for what it is. It's brilliant. And I genuinely think it's untouchable as a main event of WrestleMania for what you look back on as a kid and think like that was the sort of pinnacle. Two over the top, larger than life characters fighting each other that you wouldn't expect to happen. So really enjoyed that.
Yep.
Elsewhere on the card, something that was popping up to me quite a lot was in these earlier manias is you're getting countouts and disqualifications happening quite a lot in matches, which I actually quite liked. And another thing you're getting is people don't always have to be put away by a finisher. Sometimes somebody falls off the ropes and they get put away, or like a genuinely good reason.
Yeah.
But you've got, the reason I'm saying that, you've got $1 Million Man beats Jake Roberts by count out, which is a really good match. And you got Jake cutting this ridiculous promo before it, like the absolute master of psychology. When I was watching it, I was thinking, I wonder if, because obviously he's working in AEW now, I wonder if they have him giving classes or whatever on promos.
Yeah, they should.
So good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the card and I've just remembered one other reason I didn't like this show.
What?
Now, I might be parroting Conrad Thompson a little bit here because I'm sure he's gone on a rant about this, but it did annoy me as well when I realised it was the case. Mr. Perfect was on an unbeaten run and it was Brutus the Barber Beefcake that ended it.
Aye. That's pretty disappointing. Do you know, I was speaking to Pat today, who's sent us in comments and stuff on the show before. He was telling me that Brutus Beefcake wasn't, or I should say the genius, wasn't aware that Brutus Beefcake was going to cut his hair after the match, and he genuinely chased after him and cut his hair.
Wow. That's probably quite terrifying.
It's brilliant. Were they big garden shears?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? So, another thing about this WrestleMania was it answered one of the big wrestling questions that I've always had, Adam. It was, where did Shane McMahon get his style from, his wrestling style with the quick feet and always on the go? And I had it answered by this mixed tag team match between Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire and Randy Savage and this is Queen Sherry there, what do you call her?
Sensational
Sherry. Sapphire is on the go. As soon as she's in that ring, she is on the go with a fancy footwork non-stop. I've no doubt about it. She was taking a young Shane McMahon aside backstage and showing her how to work that footwork. She's incredible.
Nice.
Something that was putting me off, and actually I think I texted you this, it was maybe this or another one, but I put it off when I was watching it when Roddy Piper turns round when he's getting interviewed and his whole body is half painted black. I have no idea why.
Yeah.
It is, I assume this is a race thing But yeah, he wrestles the match in half blackface. I've never really understood it, but it's really weird.
Yeah, I think when the last time I watched that match or anything in the build up in this Mania, I had no idea of the context. And this is one of the things, and I'll mention this when we go later actually, that matches, certainly I did, a bit of studying and took some notes when preparing for this. I wasn't watching any of the TV or reading up on any of the sort of background and things like that. I was kind of relying on what they had in the package and the build up or what the commentators talked about. And I didn't grasp anything in terms of the storyline reason for that.
Yeah, it was really, really odd. But anyway, I mean, Piper tends to give you a good match. This was a short match, but
Yeah.
a good match. And finally, a couple of things. We had Rhythm and Blues performing their hit single, Hunka 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 Honky Love.
Nice.
Great. It's nice to see Greg the Hammer Valentine with the most ridiculous dyed black hair you've ever seen.
I bet he was loving that whole programme.
I bet he was. Guess who? Do you know a wee bit of trivia? Do you know who drove them out to the ring in a pink
I've
Cadillac?
heard this. Is it DDP?
It's DDP.
Yeah.
Bang. And Gorilla Monsoon and the Body on commentary, who are just
Nice.
absolute comedy. I think they're my favourite duo. Them two.
Yeah, I think I slightly favour Heenan with Monsoon, but I really like both, to be fair. I think they're both excellent combinations.
Yeah, they're so funny.
And I was looking at the...
Yep, so WrestleMania 6, that's my number 5. What's your 4?
Okay, my 4 is WrestleMania 8. Now, I have a little bit of a rant to have about this.
Hold on. Full disclosure, that's my number 2.
Ah, okay.
So let's jump in together. But go on, hit me with your rant. I'm always up for a rant.
Okay, so starting as we have tended to do, which is the headline match, but it shouldn't be the headline match. For some reason...
It's not the headline match.
Hogan v. Sid goes on as main event, and it shouldn't be. And I know Hogan is the star, and he's pretty much untouchable, but certainly in this era, your world title match should be your main event match. So that annoyed me, and I think it even annoyed me as a kid, because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand why this match was on when it was on. And then looking back, I wondered, because it's not a great match, it's two, big guys, Hogan and Sid. There seemed to be a desire not to hurt either of them, because I think it kind of looks like Sid has the upper hand through the match, and then Papa Shango gets involved later on, and then the Warrior comes out. And I do remember liking the Warrior coming out as a kid, because there's something like, I think the commentary, they say something like Hogan hasn't got a friend left or something like that, and then just as that said, Warrior music hits and he runs out and makes the save. And as a kid, I was loving seeing Warrior back. I thought that was great. But yeah, it wasn't a great match, and for me should not have been on last, which just annoyed me a little bit.
What did you think of Papa Shango as a kid?
I just thought it was weird. I don't remember being unnerved by it at all. I think I just like, what is that?
It was weird, eh?
Yeah.
I think had Warrior been away for a while before this, or had he been back?
I don't... I know he had a couple of disputes where he left over money a couple of times. I think he was still there. I think he left at the SummerSlam after Mania 7.
Right.
There was some sort of fallout, and he held up Vince for money. And he basically, I think on the day or the day before, said something like, he was teaming with Hogan against Slaughter in his group, and he basically said something like, I'm not going out unless you give me X amount. And I think the story goes that Vince paid him, they did the show, and then he fired him straight after. So I think this was his first appearance back since then. So it would have been, not that I was watching the TV at the time, but he would have been off for quite a few months.
But the reason I was asking is when I was thinking about Shango is that I never looked this up or anything, but I've got memories of him like making Warrior vomit, and
Yeah.
did he have stuff come out his eyes or something like that? Or am I making that up?
It was something like that, and I think that would have been straight after. So they would have gone into a program straight after Mania.
That would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a weird finish, and like you say, they're probably just trying to make both guys look strong.
Yeah.
No doubt Hogan would have had some sort of say in that and remaining strong and all that sort of stuff.
They were playing the story during it that this could well be Hulk Hogan's last ever match, and they were playing that sort of narrative all the way through. So obviously it wasn't, but I think, well, you know, he appeared at Mania 9, he appeared in the build up to that, and then we know what happened. But yeah, so nothing against, you know, the general story. It's more just I didn't feel like it should be on last.
No,
And
agreed.
I could understand it more if it was like a, you know, clearly going to be a classic match or something like that, but it was never going to be.
Do you think this is to do with Flair being seen as a WCW NWA guy rather than WWF?
I don't know, possibly. I mean, I think the surprise for everyone was that they didn't go into a Flair Hogan program, because they never did that in WWF. Apparently they did house shows and it didn't really get the reaction they hoped it would, so they pivoted a bit, and I think felt like Flair and Savage would have more chemistry, which I certainly felt like they did based on the match they had and the storyline they had. It still feels like a bit of a missed opportunity, because I think that was probably a dream match for a lot of people. Certainly anyone who followed both sides, I think, would have been disappointed not to see that when they actually had the two in the same company. So yeah, I loved everything around the sort of newly babyface, or once again babyface, Randy Savage. So he is in the title match against Flair, which is a little bit earlier on the card. And I just loved the match. There's this slightly weird story about Flair having a previous relationship with Elizabeth, and Savage, I think, playing into the reality that would have been racked with jealousy about that kind of thing. And he's talking about how he's going to show pictures that he's got of her or something like that.
Yeah,
which,
on the big screen.
yeah, which
Really weird.
for the time, I don't know, it didn't really fit.
Heenan makes reference to that. He's disappointed that he never got to see the photos.
So yeah, all through the story you've got like Perfect helping out, and Flair's just a really good heel in this run. You know, he's kind of, like you touched on, he's more a WCW guy, so he kind of has that slight outsider feel anyway, which just makes it all feel quite natural in terms of him being a heel. And it kind of felt, certainly again me watching it as a youngster, quite emotional to see Savage, who'd been a wee bit out of the, you know, the very top for a few years, to see him get back there and get the big win. So yeah, I enjoyed the match. Thought it was a well done match, a well paced match. It was quite gripping. Like it kept you pretty engrossed all through it. So yeah, that was what I thought was one of the highlights of the show. Did you enjoy that match?
Loved it. That's the main match on there for me. Flair getting bloodied up and just looking, you know, he cuts a promo after the match and he's just looking insane.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. The match is, like you say, is brilliant. There's an instance where Savage comes off the ropes and Flair back body drops him over the ropes.
Yep.
It is ridiculous. I've never seen anybody go over the ropes like that. It goes like proper head over, like somebody going off their bike.
Yeah, nice.
Like head over the heels over the ropes. It looks amazing. Did you notice Shane McMahon trying to pull them apart?
I didn't. I'm now really disappointed that I didn't.
He looks really young. There's a bunch of guys in suits come out and they're trying to pull them apart at the end, and Elizabeth's there. Shane McMahon's one of them.
Nice. There were a few other things. I think that was, you know, the main thing on the card, but there were a few other things I enjoyed. I thought the Bret Hart Roddy Piper match was very good.
How good was that?
They'd had, there was a really funny dynamic if you watch like the interview they do before, which is one of these rare ones, because it's a babyface against babyface match, so they're both kind of being interviewed together, which you wouldn't normally see, but there's almost like they sort of touch on family and things like that. I think with the indication being that Piper was always very close with Stu and people like that. But then it's almost like Roddy Piper's playing like a big brother who doesn't think it's little brother's time yet. You know, he wants to be
Squeezing him on the
keeping
cheeks
down.
and all that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I quite like that dynamic. And then there's a few times in the match as well where it looks like Piper has the opportunity to cheat, which even as a babyface, he's kind of known that he would do it, you know, under normal circumstances, but he never actually bites the bullet and does it. And it's another one of these matches, you touched on this earlier, where, to be fair, I don't know what Brett had at the time, probably had the sharpshooter, but it's one with like I don't know how to describe it, like a half roll up out of springboard off the corner turnbuckle.
Has he got in a sleeper?
Yeah.
And he just kind of rolls it. He jumps and bounces, and rolls it back. I like
Which
that.
I thought it was a good finish, and I always think that kind of thing, it leaves you somewhere to go after it, and I don't know if they really did, but it looked like there wasn't an awful lot in it between the two of them, and you could have then had another match or two if you'd wanted to get more out of it. So yeah, I thought that was a bit of a standout match.
I liked all pink Brett. He looked like a total superstar. I loved that. I liked the kind of that. I know you're saying it was the ring bell he had, wasn't it? That Piper refused to use, but there were times where they were both fighting dirty, and it felt natural because it felt like they were in a real battle. It was really good.
A couple of other things on the card that I enjoyed. I don't know if it was maybe my first experience of seeing Shawn Michaels as Shawn Michaels. And
I think this is his first WrestleMania as a heel after breaking up with the Ropers.
And, just him sort of trying to, I think, get to grips with that kind of character, and Sensational Sherry being probably quite a good fit to have with him.
Aye.
So he has a match with Tito Santana. It's just, I found it quite interesting to see him right at the beginnings of that character that lasted so long and went through so many different cycles.
He's so naturally cocky.
Yeah.
Charismatic, I suppose. He's really good at that character, even just from probably years as this kind of really, really baby face in the Rockers.
Yeah.
He fit right into that character.
And I quite enjoyed the Undertaker Jake as well.
So did
and I felt like they put over Undertaker strong there. He's like sitting up after a DDT and things like that. And if you're gonna be building a guy as a monster and a contender, it's a good opponent, I think, to put him in against, somebody who's been around and has this devastating finishing move, and he sits up from it. So yeah, I thought that was, it's a year on from him beating Jimmy Snuka, and that's a bit meh. It's not really a current star. So I thought putting him with Jake was a good move, and I thought it resulted in a good match.
It did. And Jake cuts another one of these sickening promos before it. It's really good again.
Yeah.
If you watch nothing else on this, he's amazing. He's so good at speaking to the camera. To me, it felt like when I was younger, I felt like Undertaker and Jake the Snake had this huge big rivalry that seemed to go on forever, but I think this maybe only went on for like a month or something like that.
Yeah, I think Jake left not long after this.
Right.
And I think it was something about, I can't remember if it was unhappy with the Mania payday or something, because you hear those stories quite a lot. That was a factor. And it got to a stage where he was like, okay, yeah, I will put your guy over, but I want this amount, you know. Because he'd probably realised by then he's not going to get a world title run or something like that. I think he ended up going into a run in WCW after this.
Nice. Cool. Just one other thing I wanted to mention here, and you and I spoke about separately, is the tag teams. And I think it's a theme in these earlier WrestleManias where the tag team feels up there with the Intercontinental and the heavyweight, the championship belt. Like we spoke earlier there about the Hart Foundation and the Nasty Boys. You've got Natural Disasters v Money Inc. here. And I don't think if you had IRS versus Earthquake, I don't think you would be like salivating at the mouth to watch it.
Yeah.
But Money Inc. were, to me, a really good team.
Yep.
Working together, and Natural Disasters as well. A couple of big guys there, Earthquake and Typhoon.
Yep.
I'm with you. That's my number 2. That's your number 4.
Yep.
Nice. So my number 4 is WrestleMania 10.
Okay, so that is actually my number 1.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to leave it until we get to 1, or shall we just jump in with that?
Oh, I don't mind. I think we can just go ahead.
Okay. To me, this WrestleMania is all about 2 matches. Is that fair?
I think so. I've noted a few other things that were more like I enjoyed it because I was still quite young, you know, and it fitted what I was looking for. But assuming we're going to talk about the same 2 matches, yeah, I think there's 2 absolute standouts on this.
Yeah. The first being Bam Bam and Luna versus Dink and Doink. My highlight of that match being Vince on commentary pointing out that Dink is a powerhouse in his own right.
Brilliant. He'll have said it so sincerely as well.
Unfortunately, King didn't ask him what that meant, but so we start. It's pretty bold to start out with a 25-minute technical wrestling match.
Yeah.
At WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But what match it is? Brett versus Owen, brother versus brother. A match that we've spoke about before when we talked about heel turns. First episode, don't listen to it, it's awful. But yeah, this is obviously an amazing match to watch, and it goes back and forward. The type of match that you don't really see anymore. The type of match that guys like Jericho and Benoit and Angle I feel like were putting on around about 2000s. And I wonder how many times Brett and Owen have done this as well. I was thinking when I was watching it, I wonder if it's really good fun to have that sort of match with your brother on WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think it must be, and knowing what it's going to set up as well, rather than it just being a one-off, because I think before they have this match, and then obviously what happens later in the night happens, it might have been a struggle to see Owen at that level. Mm-hmm. But they put him there. They put him there in this match, and it's just so well done and sets up everything that's to come. And it's an absolute clinic they put on, and it actually, this is one I rewatched about a week ago maybe. It just made me think. I think you've mentioned this before. All the matches Owen potentially could have had, you know, because the style he had would have fitted so many of the sort of, you know, Benoits and Angles and things like that came into the company, and Guerrero, and you know, there was a little bit, I think, of crossover with a few very skilled workers, but it's just a shame that he wasn't there to have a lot more matches with those type of performers.
I like, you know, what you're saying about what goes on later in the night. It's probably very rare for someone to compete in the first match against someone who's probably seemed to be a level under them,
Yeah.
to then go on and fight for the title, and for you to believe in them, and for them to go ahead and win the title, and it all seemed to make sense.
Yeah. And I think they obviously had the plan going in. I believe Brett wanted them to do this because he wanted to work a program with Owen, and he felt like he could elevate Owen. And I think it did just show in that match that Owen had the skill set, and you could easily elevate him. I think it was about giving him a reason and just that little bit more edge to his character,
Yeah.
which it does. You know, the way the night unfolds does that. But it's so obvious when you're watching it that, you know, he is move for move. He's there with anyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think maybe it was the first time that I would have thought of not stopped thinking of him as the just a high flyer. You know, he's obviously a very skilled mat wrestler, which came across loud and clear.
Yeah, I think it's almost disappointing where this went. You've got, jumping ahead here, but you've got Brett celebrating in the ring in quite a weird scene where all the faces come out
Yep.
and lift them up. That's so odd. It's almost like, I was thinking, this is like the end, you know, you go to the theatre and like everybody comes back on stage and gives a bow. It's like, this is,
Yeah,
anyway.
there's these weird scenarios that play out in my head of somebody being like, I don't know if I'm a face or not. I go out. To me, everything I do is justified. So,
Class. I was going to say you'd have Piper in that situation, but he's out there already in his jeans and all that.
yeah,
Yeah. But you've got Owen comes out, and there's just so much potential there. But I think if you go forward, the next guy that Brett fights is Diesel at the next pay-per-view.
yeah. I think.
Yeah.
Did they have a SummerSlam match?
Aye.
Maybe
They
Brett
do.
and
They
Owen?
have a cage match.
Yeah.
I still think it feels wasted to me the way that that's all built. You've got Owen being able to say, I beat the champion on the night he became champion. Stick the belt on him, see how it gets on, but and it obviously
Yeah.
never happened.
I always thought it was there for them to put it on him, even if it was, you know, you could see it as a fluke or something like that, the way he wins it, and then hiding, you know, and just, you know, bragging, you're never getting a rematch and things like that. I think
Aye.
it would have fitted really well. Bit of a missed opportunity.
But it's an amazing match, and it's probably one of the best matches, certainly of these first 15 WrestleManias.
Yeah.
What other matches you enjoy in the card?
I think if we're avoiding for now the ladder match, which we can speak about after, I mentioned being, you know, I was a big fan of Randy Savage, and this is one of these matches that there's such a difference between watching it now to watching it when I was a kid, because when I was a kid, I loved this match he had with
Did
Crush.
you really?
which was- yeah,
That's brilliant.
It was Falls Count Anywhere, and I thought, oh, this is, you know, a bit different, like this.
Aye.
But then when you actually watch it now, it's just garbage.
What are these rules? Talk to me about these rules. Is this like an antiquated version of Falls Count Anywhere? Is this what it used to be?
It seems to be you have to stop your opponent being able to get back to the ring, right? So Savage like ties him to this structure and then tries to pull him up, so he's basically dangling by his feet.
Yeah, it doesn't work
But
properly.
he just,
does it? It just
sort of
falls
slumps
back.
back down, which is just one of the many not great looking moments in the match. And I remembered they had like this program that kind of sprung up out of nowhere where they'd been friends and Crush turned heel, and without any real explanation, they just seem to talk about this new attitude that Crush has got, which just involves hating Randy Savage. It's not, anything broader than that. But I liked it as a kid, so I tried to give it the benefit of the doubt, but it's not good.
It's short, at least.
Yeah, there is that.
I was really confused when Crush pinned him and the referee counted to 3 within like a minute. I was like, oh, so that was And it's like, now it's 60 seconds.
Yep.
Okay. Different.
I've written in my notes that the doink and bam bam is nonsense. That's all I've written.
That is awful. There's a horrible botch right at the end of this where Bam Bam and Luna go to bounce off the ropes, and they're both going to try and splash Dink, but he rolls the wrong way. He rolls out the way Bam Bam, and Luna splashes on him, and then she starts selling it like she hurt herself. It's awful.
Yeah.
I'm with you. It's nonsense.
No.
Who's the person pushing for these intergender tag team matches? It's like every now and then at WrestleMania they seem to pop up.
Yeah, I mean, why save it for your biggest show?
Get buried in a backlash or something.
I remember, like, you know, there's about a 5-second match between Earthquake and Adam Bomb, which again, it's not the best. And
I think that was supposed to go longer, but I think your Click Boys maybe stole their time.
What a shame.
Same with the really random, I'm going to be captain of the tag team. What on earth are they talking about? There was supposed to be a 10-man tag as well, but that got nixed because of the ladder match.
Yeah. I didn't, you know, I suppose you're never gonna, there's not that many great Lex Luger matches out there. I remember, you know, they tried the Luger Yokozuna thing a couple of times, and they had the big storyline where he's able to pick him up and power slam him and things like that, and it just seemed to fizzle out so quickly. And I think, I could be wrong on this, but was this, obviously there's 2 title matches because it was deemed that Hart and Luger co-won the Rumble because their feet hit at the same time. Yeah. Was that, do you know, was that intentional, or was that...
I don't know.
I'm not sure whether it was maybe a botch that they just thought, here's where we could go with it, or whether, because I think there was always the intention to put the title on Hart. I don't think they were ever going to go with Luger by this point. But yeah,
I think there was a point where they were investing in Luger as the new Hogan.
Yeah,
then they realised he was Lex Luger.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was maybe a Bruce Pritchard podcast, and he's talking about, they had a SummerSlam title match, and Luger wins the match, but it's by count out or something like that, so he doesn't become champ. And apparently right up until close to that, they'd been thinking, right, this is our guy, Luger's our guy, he's who we're going to go with. And the crowd just weren't buying it. And they had him go on this thing called the Lex Express.
Yes.
Basically a bus going city to city, and he's supposed to be out greeting all the fans. Bruce Pritchard saying something like, the problem was he hates people. he's like, much as you can criticise Hogan and all that, he's generally, you know, quite a friendly, outgoing person, and Luger isn't that, so they're trying to force him into this role that just didn't suit him at all. And I think they maybe pivot to, is it Luger and Perfect?
Right.
Because Perfect's the ref in that first title match.
That's right, aye. It's a really kind of woolly finish where he touches Perfect's shirt and Perfect has enough and DQs him, so you can see that they're making the next steps for that.
And I think at the time they're wanting to keep Luger strong, because who knows where they might want to go with him in future. But yeah, I think I'm kind of with the majority of the fan base that I didn't really buy Luger either. I just felt like they were, it's almost quite a modern thing with some performers trying to ram this guy down our throats, but nobody really was buying it.
For it.
Yeah.
I've got a really low opinion of Luger, so I was pleasantly surprised by this. I actually quite enjoyed it.
Okay.
Luger is massive.
He is.
Like, unbelievably so. I wonder if he ever fought Hogan. I'd quite like to see them together. I'm sure he would have in WCW.
They did in WCW. I think it might have been, you know how Luger on the first ever live Nitro, he does the walk-in. Yeah. I think he maybe confronts Hogan.
He does, actually, you're right.
Yeah.
I know where you've been. I've been there too. Now I'm here to play with the big boys. That's right. I'll need to go back and watch that. Was this after the narcissist Lex Luger? I think it was.
He was He was the narcissist when he was first brought in, and he was, I think, basically he was Bobby Heenan's new guy because Flair had gone back. I think.
Right.
And he was, going to get the push, but it was something to do with a non-compete that they actually brought him in under the Bodybuilding Federation banner.
Oh, really?
Because he couldn't actually sign with WWF, but I think it was Vince's way of giving him money immediately and having him be around but not be in matches, but
right.
It meant he could have him under contract effectively and start making the plans for what he was going to do with him.
Yeah.
Well, they waited out a few months where he wasn't allowed to perform for them. So I think they maybe, if they'd pulled the trigger at SummerSlam or something like that, maybe I could have bought into the Luger thing, and maybe that kind of situation didn't help him, but I just always found him a bit meh.
The whole USA pants and all that's just, that's proper like forcing it, especially going against Yokozuna as well, as forcing it down your throat.
Yeah.
On to better things. What about the WrestleMania rap by Oscar that came out with our boy Big Daddy V and the other guy that was on Men in the Mission? Fighting the Quebecers. I was surprisingly entertained by this.
Did you enjoy it?
I did. I enjoyed Raven at the side doing his Raven pose, even though he was Johnny Polo. I did actually quite enjoy that.
I think we're the same in always having liked Raven. I don't think they ever really used him in ring, did they? And in that whole
No, I don't think so.
era.
No.
Yeah.
Well, what was he supposed to be supposed to be a polo player, was he?
I think so. I think he was just supposed to be this, slightly posh, ultra successful guy.
It's so random compared to what he went on to be.
I know. And if you ever listen to any of the Tony Schiavone podcasts, he was really good friends, or I think they still get on and things like that with Raven. And he said that he did have, like, apparently he was obsessed with comic books. So the whole Raven character was very much in his mind comic book based, and then they kind of just ran with it. But they're saying it's one of those where you have this guy playing all these different roles, and then it's just eventually when the guy puts his hand up and says, "How about this?" and you're like, maybe we should have been listening to him all along rather than creating these characters. But it's been a couple of pretty different characters.
Just while we're talking about Raven, I want to give another podcast a plug. On YouTube, there's a podcast called Rewind, Recap, Relive. And on that, the host has got a really good interview with Raven. He's talking about promos and the psychology that goes into promos. If you're interested at all, give that a watch. It's great. It's really good. Anyway, should we go into the ladder match, or do you want to do a deep dive of Leilani Kai versus Alundra Blaze?
Let's go ladder match.
Cool. Great.
Yep. So, I think I don't know if we've specifically talked about this ladder match before. We maybe have, or maybe talked about ladder matches in general. But yeah,
I think we have. I think on our Intercontinental episode we talked about this match, definitely, because I think we both spoke about these guys.
Yeah, obviously iconic match, and I'm just going to give you a little personal anecdote about how I came to first ever see this.
Love it.
Because I didn't have it by I think Mania 10, everything was being shown on Sky.
Right.
And pretty early days of Sky, and I think WWF programming was one of their really big money makers at the time when they were sort of still building their library of channels and all that. And a friend of mine, Stephen, he had Sky, and I was like, he gets to see all this stuff that's on, and I have to wait for months for everything to come out on video. So he, every time there was a big event on, he would tape it, and then he would give me the tape, and it would mean I wouldn't have to wait for, you know, months to actually see something that was new and newly out.
These are the real heroes in life.
Absolutely.
When you're a young kid that doesn't have Sky, you are the I hesitate to say you're the real MVPs. You're the heroes in our life. I had someone in my life that did the same, and I would be badgering him for videotapes. So shout out to Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. So he gave me this tape for WrestleMania 10, and I was like, awesome. It's been Mania time, brilliant. And I was still really into it at the time. It was actually probably the 3 years after this that I kind of fell out with it a wee bit, and I wasn't so keen to take the tapes. Yeah, I'd never seen anything like a ladder match, and I think, you know, for potentially a generation that started watching just a few years ago, they would have seen these crazy, you know, table, ladders, chairs matches and things like that before they ever saw something like this.
Yeah.
But I never had, and this was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen as a kid. And unlike, you know, Randy Savage v Crush or something like that, this holds up when you watch it now. It's so well executed. It's so clever. The moves they come up with. I think the psychology of the match, rather than just being totally gung ho, you know, let's do every possible high spot under the sun. They're really clever with the way they execute everything.
Yeah.
And it still stands up as one of the best matches I've seen.
I think I would go further than that and say it's going back and watching it. It's become even better. Knowing what has come from it. To go back and see the kind of innovation and where a lot of this stuff comes from that people use, you know, it's not special anymore. At this point it was special, and like you say, it's like mind-boggling to be seeing it for the first time. We're really lucky to be the age that we are, to have been able to see things like that before you saw hardcore matches, before you saw TLC matches and all that, because you get to see the progression and you get to have seen it right from the start.
Yeah.
The innovation and the storytelling, like you say, psychology, and like it's not relying on crazy, like, you know, there's nothing out of the ordinary when you look back on it now, but they're not relying on kind of shock factor bumps and jumping 20 feet in the air and all that sort of stuff. It's all storytelling. Yep. They use the gimmick really well. It's what more can you say? It's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. I think one of the things that crossed my mind was to have, I think, that and the Bret Owen match, and then when you look at the rest of the card, sort of quite rightly, these are massively the standouts. But I genuinely thought they were two of the great matches. I think the show kind of felt important to me because of those.
Yeah.
And the other element that I was going to speak about a little bit was because it felt like the crowning of Bret Hart at the end, which felt like, you know, the start of a new era. But in the ladder match, you know, you've talked about everything that's to come after that, so it's kind of the start of that era, you know, as well. Although it takes a while before we've got, seems like they're every couple of weeks now that you get a ladder match. But as you say, nothing that we've seen involving ladders would be happening if this hadn't happened. Apparently it was Bret Hart's idea, and I think he and Shawn did the first ever WWF ladder match, but it wasn't televised. It was just that house show.
Yeah. You can get that. I think you can get that on. You can get that on the network.
Right.
We spoke about it in an Intercontinental episode.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's just another thing that makes it special to me is Madison Square Garden. There's just something I've said it before, but there's just something about that hard camera angle of wrestlers coming out, like you're looking directly down it. Is it SummerSlam '98 that's also at Madison Square Garden? Undertaker versus Stone Cold.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And I remember thinking that's just an amazing event as well. Something just special about it. Obviously, you had WrestleMania 1 there.
Yeah.
They seem to be going for the go back there every 10 years, although it's 30. I'm guessing they never went back there because they were doing the arenas, doing the stadiums by 30.
Yeah. I think it's still a venue the performers hold quite dear, and I imagine, you know, the sort of crowd being right on top of you, it just creates a totally different atmosphere.
Yeah. One of the Royal Rumbles that we spoke about, I can't remember what year it is, but it's the one when John Cena returns. It's number 30. It's a surprise, and the crowd are going absolutely bananas.
Yeah.
And like you say, they're right on top of him. It's class.
Nice.
Cool. Well,
So the only negative I was going to mention about this show.
I've got a negative too. Go.
Okay. Well, actually, there were a few negatives because I touched around some of the not so great matches. The commentator team, Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler, and it just didn't grab me the way the other ones did. And it's fine for, I know they were 2 parts of quite often 3 on Raw and things like that. But I just didn't feel like you had quite that same dynamic that you get with, you know, Monsoon and Jesse Ventura, or Monsoon and Bobby Heenan, or even like JR with Jerry Lawler, or JR with Paul Heyman. You know, I just didn't feel like the dynamic was quite as good as it is on some of the shows.
I agree. So at WrestleMania 9 you had Vince, JR and Savage.
Yeah.
I can't really recall where JR's went in between the 2 WrestleManias, but you missed them. You missed something.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Vince and King's just a bit meh. I've mentioned it already, but my negative is that weird ending with all the faces coming out, and
Yeah.
apart from Savage kind of makes up for it by sitting on the ropes and telling Owen to come in the ring. But it's just a bit weird, like I say.
Yeah, I get it. I think the main reason, because obviously I've put this at 1, I think the main reasons, the 2 matches we've talked about, the crowning, I think, of Bret Hart, and the fact that you've elevated Owen and elevated the guys in the ladder match as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm with you. So that was my number 4. So we're jumping into your third.
Let's jump into my third, yeah. Okay. So, my third is WrestleMania 5.
Yes.
So, I touched on this earlier, about the whole, you know, Savage Hogan, this being... I'm absolutely sure it was the first WrestleMania I bought on videotape, and it just having this really special feel to me. And just for a little bit of background on my thoughts on it, when you look through the WrestleMania main events, you know, the first one had a tag match. It was Hogan and Mr. T against Piper and, was it Paul Orndorff, I think. The second one, Hogan against King Kong Bundy. The third one, Hogan Andre. I get that one. That's okay. Fourth one, the tournament, and I kind of get that as well. But this felt to me like here is 2 of the biggest stars, 2 as a kid of my favourites. They'd turned Savage heel quite brilliantly. They sort of, I think, tapped into some real life animosity, real life jealousy, and basically made it the headline act of the show. I think there's not many reasons, but one of the reasons that I'd put it slightly above 6 from my memories is that nostalgia feel, but also the fact that it being babyface heel, which might sound, why do you need that? I've already touched on some face matches that are pretty well executed, but I like the top line match being two absolute top tier guys, one babyface, one heel.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know I've talked about the storyline behind Hogan Savage previously, on the jealousy angle, Savage having some issues with the way Hogan is with Elizabeth, there being backstage fights breaking out, them kind of not saving each other when there's a beatdown despite them being partners and things like that. It just all led to this match. In the match, Savage plays the heel very well. He, is willing to take shortcuts. He's quite verbally aggressive towards Elizabeth, who's in a neutral corner. And I think, probably even as a kid, Hogan's going to come out on top of it. But I just really enjoyed the match. Felt like it was a proper Mania headline match. And I think ever since then, Savage had always been one of my favourites. Just always really liked watching him perform. So yeah, that was a big part of it. Just the headline being really feeling like a main event to me.
Yeah. I feel like this WrestleMania is like the kind of WrestleMania as we know it, the first proper WrestleMania as we know it, with the big main event.
Yeah.
The one-on-one.
Yeah, and I think people see Hogan and Andre as that, which is absolutely fine. I think that was just a wee bit too early for me to get as into it as I could get into this. There's a few other things that I really liked about the show. I was always... Ravishing Rick Rude. I hated him as a kid. And I assumed that was the plan. You're supposed to hate a good heel. But I really hated him. And I would wonder why he was in these big matches and things like that, because he's just this annoying guy. And he was aligned with Bobby Heenan, which was perfect, and he has a match with Ultimate Warrior at this event where Bobby Heenan holds Warrior's foot down while Rick Rude covers him and gets the pinfall for the win, to win the Intercontinental belt. And it was quite a shock, quite a surprise. Oh, Warrior's lost this title to Rick Rude at this event. But I would sort of qualify it by saying now, when I go back and watch Rick Rude stuff, I think he's brilliant. I think he, his heel abilities were superb. He was, I think, a lot bigger physically than I had remembered him being. He was actually huge. But I think just because he was always next to folk like Warrior or someone like that, he maybe just didn't quite look as big. But yeah, he going back and rewatching this match, I really enjoyed it, and I have since, any time I look through the network and find old matches that I want to watch, anything with Rick Rude I quite enjoy now. So it just, I think, shows how you can change as you grow up a bit.
That's so funny. I wonder what it was that proper put you off as a kid.
Yeah, and it might just have been, I've got memories of him doing stuff like, he would always have these customised tights that he wore.
Yeah.
And I remember an angle with Jake the Snake where he had Jake's wife on them, a picture of his wife, and I remember, now I would be like laughing and thinking that's genius, but then it was like, what is he doing?
That's outrageous.
So
that's amazing.
Again, probably the exact effect they're looking for. There's a few more tag team matches on this. Sort of talked previously about what teams used to look like and what they look like now, but there was a few I wanted to mention because Heart Foundation are on this, and they have a match against Greg Valentine and Honky Tonk Man, who are pretty limited, but I always enjoyed watching the Heart Foundation.
Good singers.
The other team that stood out to me on this were one that did not stand out to me as youngsters, but the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, who had obviously been part of the Four Horsemen, huge runs in WCW. I don't know, I kind of thought of them as a bit meh when I saw them as a kid, because I don't know if it's because they didn't like have a gimmick. You know, they just dressed fairly normal for wrestlers. They almost, you know, they would dress like jobbers, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Their gimmick is kind of like they're good wrestlers, eh?
Yeah, and I remember they got wins against these, you know, really big established teams. And I kind of thought, well, what's that about? That's quite weird. But looking back now, they're really impressive as a team. They've got a match here against Strike Force, which was Rick Martel and Tito Santana.
It's a great tag team name.
Yeah, and I think they break up maybe not long after this, but it's a good match, good dynamic between the two. Those two guys are, you know, pretty quick, pretty physical and things like that. And then it's all this sort of tag psychology that the Brainbusters are using, you know, cutting off the ring, taking the guy into your corner, double teaming him and things like that. Just little things that are kind of lost in the mix, I think, with a lot of, well, I was going to say a lot of tag wrestling, but on WWE there isn't an awful lot at all anyway. So yeah, enjoyed going back and watching them. There was a Demolition against Powers of Pain, sort of big man tag team match, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed it a lot as a kid. I thought they all looked pretty cool with face paint and stuff like that. But there was something, again, it was on another podcast, that was said that has kind of really made me think ever since about Demolition, which is, somebody just said, I didn't realise, you know, those guys are just wearing bondage out there.
It's really questionable. I remember when I was young thinking, whoa, they are super hard. But when you look at it now, it's like, why are they wearing like a gimp outfit, basically?
Yeah. So yeah, I tried not to think too much about that when I was rewatching this. There's a decent match. It's pretty short, but there's a Mr. Perfect against Blue Blazer match on this card as well, which is Owen Hart before he's going with the name Owen Hart in WWE, and he's very young. And it's he is kind of a no name, and it's quite a nice showcase for what I assume was a relatively new Perfect to the WWF. So that's fun. There's a Bushwhackers match, and again, you talk about things that don't quite look right now. I mean, just walking around licking kids, that's pretty weird. But,
we need context. If somebody was to just randomly listen to a bit, that'd be questionable.
Yeah, so part of their entrance and sometimes part of their matches, they would walk in, and the kids absolutely loved them. There was always a pop for Bushwhackers, and they would just kind of go up and, you know, lick them on the forehead and stuff like that. It was strange.
They
Looking
look
back
really
now,
old. Like even then, well, I can't remember what Mania it was I was talking about earlier. It's 8 maybe. They interrupt that song that Honky Tonk Man, Greg Valentine was singing. They look so old. I can't understand. I'm sure they're not.
Apparently, they used to be. They used to have all these like really bloody matches and things like that.
Amazing.
Before they went to WWE, they were
Deathmatch legends.
I think they were called the Sheep Herders.
Oh dear.
And yeah, they were these really like violent performers. And apparently Vince just looked at them and thought, they're a comedy act. So that's kind of what they became.
Yeah, brilliant.
And a couple other things in here. There's a Brutus Beefcake Ted DiBiase match, which you touched on earlier, that they did this at times. It ends in a double count out. And there's a really nice contrast in the Twin Towers match, Akeem and Bossman against the Rockers. So you've got these absolutely huge guys. The Rockers are selling the hell out of everything for them.
Amazing.
And what I've always really liked about the Rockers watching them is the amount of like combination moves they went for and things like that.
Yeah.
So just seeing those up against the power of the other two and the size and weight of the other two, I thought made for quite a good match. So yeah, it's still, some of it doesn't hold up quite as well, but I still felt it was definitely justified being up there as one of my favourite Manias.
Like it. Nice. Cool, that was your what? 3?
That was my 3, yeah, and we've already had my 1, so I will have 1 left.
Cool. Okay, no. My number 3 is WrestleMania 12. 1996, which is headlined by the Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, which, despite having an hour to wrestle each other, they managed to go 0-0, and it's then won a minute later by Shawn Michaels. Obviously, this is probably the WrestleMania with the least amount of matches, just simply because you've got an hour-long match, and I think that's part of the appeal for me. Something that's going to be really difficult, I think, when we get into doing the 2000s and 2010 WrestleManias, is like the 5.5 hour WrestleManias. Got to have to drink a lot of coffee for the next 2 weeks. But yeah, so this has only got, I think it's only had 6 televised matches, maybe seven televised matches. So the Iron Man match is what it is. It's similar to the ladder match, and it's similar to Owen and Brett that we've talked about already. If you like that type of thing, then it's just great to watch. There's a reason they don't do many Iron Man matches, but Michaels and Bret Hart, I think, could go all day. They might not have liked each other backstage, but they had cracking chemistry. They were really great to watch, and this doesn't drag. They do like the kind of things that you would expect from an hour-long match. There's a lot of holds, but again, like I say, it doesn't drag. It really builds to a really good crescendo right at the end. Personally, I'd like to have seen Michaels tap out right at the very end. Brett's got him in the sharpshooter right at the end. But they go with the 0-0, and then Michaels catches him after a minute. But it's a good match. If you've got, if you've got an hour and want to watch that type of thing, it's good fun to watch. Elsewhere, you've got a surprisingly good match between Undertaker and Diesel. It always surprises me the height of Kevin Nash. He's massive. He makes Undertaker look small at times.
Yeah.
We've got Undertaker in his purple and black. He looks great. Towards the latter stages of his career, I'm not the biggest fan of Undertaker at all, but seeing these early WrestleManias, he's what they call him, is a phenom. He's brilliant to watch. That's a really good match. We got Undertaker winning that match. One of the surprising highlights of this WrestleMania for me is the Hollywood backlot brawl between Piper and Goldust. Now, if you're wondering how you win a Hollywood backlot brawl, how do you think you would win that?
I couldn't even guess.
Well, me neither. I assumed you would pin them, but once you've hit a guy with a car,
yeah.
Once you've practically killed the guy when he's trying to get out of his car, and fight him down to the ring and strip him down into questionable underwear, apparently the way to win it is to then knee him in the balls.
Yeah, well, that'll do it.
Well, that triggers your music, you've won. But the intersperse, this is obviously filmed prior to it's obviously not live and all that, but it is brutal. I don't know if you've watched this recently, but
I haven't for a while. I mean, I know. I think I could be wrong in this, just like with everything I say, I could be slightly wrong. I think it was supposed to be Scott Hall and Goldust.
Oh, really?
And Scott Hall was quite vocal about not being comfortable working with the Goldust character. Mm-hmm. And it was, how he would do gestures and grope people and stuff like that. He just wasn't comfortable with it.
Aye.
So I think they basically came... Cause Scott Hall isn't on the show, is he? He's not got a match.
Nah,
but
this must be right before him and Nash jump, isn't
it? It must be close, yeah.
It's 96, it must be.
So I think they basically took the view of, it's fine, we'll get somebody else to have a match with him. So they've obviously just taken the Razor Ramon character right out of the show, but he did a couple of matches with him, and they wanted it to be a full program, and he just wasn't comfortable doing it, so they replaced him for this. And I don't know if it was the fact that they maybe weren't comfortable just having Piper come in and do, you know, a normal match with him. They needed to have some other different element to it. But yeah, it's definitely different. It's quite a unique match.
There are aspects that I love about it. That there's some kind of corny aspects about it. So that they start out the match in this Hollywood backlot. Like Goldust literally drives his car into Piper at one point. It's ridiculous. Piper's got a baseball bat. He's feeding Goldust these ridiculous potatoes that open up Goldust. He's easily given him his one. You know, he's given him a proper punch here. But then in between matches and all that, we see footage of the OJ chase, because you see Piper.
Yeah.
No, Goldust. You see Goldust take off in this. No, sorry. You see Piper take off in a white Bronco, and they use footage of the OJ chase and all that. It's a bit silly. I don't know how close to that happening that this was, but it's just like typical McMahon type affair. But it's good fun. A couple other good bits about this show: Stone Cold, a much more mobile Stone Cold fighting Savio Vega. Really interested to see Stone Cold going off the top rope.
Yep.
It's kind of quite shocking. He used to go off the top rope with the elbow, similar to how he does off the second rope, but I guess his knees can't take that. And when they're showing you the build up to it, he's in white boots as well, which is just really That's alien weird. To see.
I know he's always spoken really highly of Vega, because I think he felt like he could always have a good match with him, and he would always give Austin a lot. I think he's, you know, never really broke as a big star or anything like that, but I think he's maybe one of the workers that the rest of them enjoyed being in the ring with.
I think what happened was Vega and Austin were a tag team. There was a tournament leading up to WrestleMania to decide who would be fighting for the vacant tag team belts, and I assume they'd had a falling out or something like that. We've still got Ted DiBiase with Austin, but he's progressed from the Ringmaster character to Stone Cold Steve Austin. But it's good, and it's like I say, just interesting to see him not throwing the fingers and not with the big knee braces on and that. And this WrestleMania answers another one of my burning questions I've always had. And that question is, where did Triple H learn to bury people? I think we know the answer. It's when he met the Ultimate Warrior, and he got buried in a minute. Sorry, go on.
Does he completely no-sell the pedigree?
Like, yeah. To be fair, like, he doesn't take it. He takes it brilliantly. He sells it as in he takes it brilliantly, but he literally just gets straight back up and beats him down, gorilla presses him, 1, 2, 3. You've got Triple H with Sable on his arm, and this is the same Mania where you get introduced to Mark Merrow.
Okay.
It's so funny that Mark Merrow gets like a 30-second interview, but Sable's on Triple H's arm. I'm sure I've listened. I heard on a podcast before that when Vince met Merrow and Sable, he was just open-eyed, staring at Sable the whole time.
Yeah, and it's another thing that I heard on I quite like the Schiavone podcast, because I wasn't watching as much WCW, so I wasn't as aware of some of the stuff going on. But like Mark Mero had a character in WCW before. I think it's Johnny B. Bad.
Yeah.
And basically Tony Schiavone's going, yeah, so you know what Vince did when he met Mark Mero and Sable? He's like, she's going on TV. There was nobody in our office saying that. Why? What are they not seeing? You know, it's just, yeah.
That's classic Vince. Final thing I was going to say about this is the first match is a 6-man tag. You have Vader, Owen, and the Bulldog against Ahmed Johnson, Jake Roberts, and Yokozuna, which is one of the kind of typical WrestleMania matches where it just seems like here's a bunch of guys, let's just chuck them together. But it's surprisingly quite a good match.
Okay.
I feel like Vader's quite an underrated guy generally.
Yeah, I know he was really well thought of in like every other promotion he fought in. It just, I think, for whatever reason, didn't really work in WWE. I know there was an incident with Shawn Michaels.
Made him cry.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if that's just it. If the top tier guys don't want to work with you, then that's where you are. But I mean, he was always a huge monster in WCW, and he beat everyone. He beat Sting. You know, he basically went there and dominated. And you think they could have used him in a similar way, they just didn't.
So yeah, that's my rundown of WrestleMania 12. I was really surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I knew that I would enjoy the Iron Man match, but the rest of it was great. Especially that Undertaker Diesel match, it's class.
That's good. That's it's one, like I didn't, how do I word this? I didn't rule it out. I had a few that I ruled out really quickly, and that was sort of on my list after the first cut. And then I didn't take it forward from there. But like the Undertaker Diesel match, that probably is one that flies under the radar because you kind of think of this as a one match show.
Aye. And it's also like two big guys, and you kind of think you probably know what you're getting.
Yeah.
But see, just the sight of Diesel hitting Undertaker with a jackknife powerbomb's class.
Yeah, nice.
Okay. So we've had your number 1, which was WrestleMania 10.
Yep.
We've had my number 2, which was WrestleMania 8. So what is left is your 2 and my 1, and I suspect they might be the same. WrestleMania 50. No, just joking. What's your number 2, Adam?
My number 2 is WrestleMania 14.
Yeah, and that's my number 1.
Nice. Yeah, I think we both came to the same conclusion on 15, actually, that we thought it would be good. We were quite enthusiastic for it, and then it wasn't. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it does not hold up at all.
no. I think, you see the Austin Rock banner as the main event, and you just think, this will be good. But no, I just thought it was really, really poor. But certainly the one before it, I enjoyed a lot. So yeah, it was in contention to be number 1. I just edged 10 ahead of it. So yeah, it's I think obviously it's the crowning of Steve Austin. And as I touched on at 10, I like a crowning of the guy.
Yeah.
And I think, so much of the programming and so much of the show is built around that match. Shawn Michaels is, from everything I've heard and understood, pretty much in pieces by the point it's come along.
Yeah.
Psychologically not in a good place, physically a bit ruined, and is going away for a while after the match. And I think there were actually some concerns. I remember hearing Undertaker say that, he let it be known to Shawn that he had to do the business in this match. He had to put Austin over, otherwise there would be repercussions. Because I think the character Shawn was at the time maybe wasn't the most trustworthy.
Yeah. It's old story, Undertaker sitting taping up his hands.
Yeah, But to be fair to Shawn Michaels, the performance he puts in, given the physical state he's apparently in, is quite brilliant. Actually, he's obviously doing a lot of selling. He has his points where he's seemingly in control of the match and things like that.
Yeah.
Thought it was a really enjoyable back and forth match. You've got the Mike Tyson as the enforcer, just being that sort of extra element of it. I remember when I was watching, because I was back in by this point. I'd had probably looking at Mania as I was probably a bit disengaged at 11, 12, 13. And then I'd come back into it, and mostly due to people like Austin and factions like DX and things like that. So DX were really over, but Austin, I mean, the crowd reactions and everything that he's getting are incredible by this point. And I think they obviously added Mike Tyson as an element to it to, I think, get some mainstream eyeballs on it and things like that. He's obviously a really big, well-known name, big star. And they play it that he's aligned with DX. There was a really good, actually, like pull apart one attempt at a brawl on Raw between Austin and Tyson, which I always thought was quite a believable angle, to like alpha male characters. Austin saying you're in my ring, you're out of your element and things like that. So I thought they played that well to align Tyson with DX and stack the deck against Austin in theory. And yeah, just thought it was a really good match. Thought they put Austin over well. They're crowning him as the guy. He's going to go on this brilliant run. And they do this sort of twist at the end with Mike Tyson knocking out Shawn Michaels after Tyson does the actual count, because there's been a ref bump. So a very fast count.
Yep.
And I'm not sure what, in the cold light of day, what people would have made of that, but very fast count. But then, obviously Tyson doesn't like the way he's been spoken to by Michaels, and he throws a KO punch.
JR gets very animated when he throws that punch.
Yeah.
Like he's forgotten every single word in the vocabulary except Tyson.
He has these moments, JR, but I wouldn't have it any other way. But yeah, it just it felt like a main event, felt like a big moment, felt like they were now moving forward with this top star, and I thought it held up really well.
Yep, I agree. The build-up's perfect. Mike Tyson seemed to be really enjoying himself. I don't know what. Yeah, I think that extra aspect, it was all played perfectly. Yeah. He had a questionable suck it, but we'll let him off for that.
The only thing that annoyed me about the Tyson's performances all through it was he kept saying things Cold Stone. I think he couldn't seem to say Stone Cold.
He was only calling Shawn Heartbreak.
Yeah.
Why, his name's Shawn Michaels.
Yeah,
you are Heartbreak.
Yeah, that's in the package before the match, isn't it?
Aye.
Yeah, but yeah, I still obviously he was a huge star, so I thought it was worth doing, worth having him in it. 'Cause a lot of the time you look at an extra piece that's brought in and it doesn't really feel like it adds anything. And also he wasn't directly involved in the match, which I liked as well. You know, it's about the two performers and he's just an added element.
Yeah, like you look at other just boxers that have come in. You've had Floyd Mayweather versus The Big Show on a WrestleMania, and when they used Tyson Fury in a program with Braun Strowman, and it was not good. And it's because you've got them in the ring trying to do wrestling moves, trying to fake punches. Whereas with Tyson, like you say, just used perfectly.
Yeah.
Did you hear the story at WCW were offered Tyson first?
Yeah, I did.
And Bischoff passed it up.
Yeah, I don't know if were they reluctant because of the character?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's just quite funny, especially at that time, 1998, where it was probably at a tipping point.
Yeah, I think the tide had turned a bit by this point. I think Nitro probably still had some wins after this, because when McMahon got really involved with Austin, I think that's probably what tipped it over the edge, which was probably, started the night after this, basically, I think. But yeah, just really well executed, great match.
Some other really big things happen on this WrestleMania. I feel like, you're talking about the christening of Stone Cold. We're kind of at an earlier part of his career for The Rock.
Yeah.
Where The Rock fights Shamrock.
Yep.
I think it's for the Intercontinental Belt.
It is. Yeah.
It's a really good match.
Yep.
My only issue with it is the chair shot that The Rock gives Shamrock is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's probably the main criticism of The Rock's career, really, is some of the chair shots.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they have Rock playing. He's I think at this point he's started to challenge Farouk kind of for the leadership of the nation.
Yeah.
And Farouk comes out at a point but doesn't help him.
Yeah.
And they have Shamrock, who is playing he's snapped.
It's gonna snap.
Yeah, and his own refusal to release the hold ends up in the ref taking the win off him.
It just makes him angrier.
Yeah.
Don't tell him. Wait until
that's
he's
a
away
good
home.
point. Yeah,
Is this when Finkel just said, "The Rock"?
Yeah, that was weird.
I like Shamrock here.
Yeah.
I think I didn't have the highest. I think I've always seen him as that kind of intercontinental level guy. I think that they did have plans for him to push him to the next stage. I don't know why they didn't, but I think he could have made that transition.
Yeah, I think so.
He's obviously a believable, tough guy.
Yeah, I think some of them, because they had him and then they brought in Dan Severn, and I've heard them say, I think both of them, that they struggled a little bit in the early days to get the trust of the guys that they're working with, because it's a totally different discipline, and basically you're going from trying to hurt someone to trying to make it look like you're hurting someone. And he said it a little bit of took him a little bit of time, but I imagine it was just the sort of lack of layers in the personality that maybe stopped him from getting more over. But I really liked him and The Rock up against each other. It just kind of worked.
Yep.
So yeah, no, that was good, and it kept Shamrock, looking like this crazed monster, which I think was important for him.
Gives you somewhere to go with it as well. They could rematch. What you probably expect to get out of that was Farouk and The Rock, but it never really materialised properly.
No, I think they just I think they maybe had one match after the rest of the nation turn on Farouk and side with The Rock. I think there's like one match after that, but that's it. Yeah, it's the first. I think just because my memory of the build-up package, this was the first Undertaker-Kane match on this card as well.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and almost like the anticipation of it, the build-up of it and everything, because they go through the story of Undertaker won't fight back, he won't fight his brother, and then it just comes to a point where he's kind of got no option, and they play it off that way. And they've got Paul Bearer with Kane, and the whole crazy backstory that they've given the character. But yeah, the actual the first match, and I thought it was pretty good. You're again a little bit limited by you know what the match is going to be. It's two big, strong guys, but I thought they executed a pretty good match.
Yeah, and they make Kane look like an absolute monster in this. I think he kicks out
Yeah.
at 2 tombstones.
Yeah.
And then he kicks out on like 3.1
Yep.
as well after the third tombstone. They're really committed to making him look like a monster, and I think they achieved that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably one of those where they probably packaged him as this, thinking it'll last like 3 months or something, and we'll try and get some matches out of it. But obviously, it worked a lot better than that.
Like we've talked about Austin, we talked about Michaels, The Rock. Probably one of the biggest pops for anybody on this whole card is for Sable.
Yeah.
Like, the fans absolutely love her.
Yeah.
It's really surprising. You've got another one of these mixed tag matches, and my only note against this is, what on earth is Goldust wearing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a bit different.
He's got his face painted red with the letters FU,
Yeah.
because we're in the Attitude Era now and we're edgy.
Yeah.
Get it? But it's a quite good match actually for what it is.
Yeah, I think is this where they coined the Sable Bomb? Did she
Aye.
actually execute the final move? And
She hits Luna with it. Aye. Fans
And
go
they're-
mad for it.
and they're playing on the fact that Mark Merrow's very jealous of Sable, even though they're teaming together. He's aware she's getting the bigger cheers and all that, and which, you know, a pretty good storyline just for a basic story angle, because you can see it happening, you can understand that. So yeah, I think that I've got in my notes a lot better than you would have thought it would be, for that match.
Do you think she's ever tried to Sable bomb Brock?
I would think he would reverse it.
Straight into an F5. One of the highlights of this WrestleMania for me is the tag team dumpster match.
Yes.
What, like, here's a question: why are they not allowed to call Terry Funk Terry Funk? Why is he Chainsaw Charlie and then they just refer to him as Terry Funk for the the whole match?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if, because Mick Foley wasn't Mick Foley, he was Cactus Jack. Are they trying to, give Terry Funk something similar? I always found that weird because I didn't necessarily know a lot about him or his background or anything like that, but I knew he'd been in WCW and that he had a name. Yeah, it always seemed quite strange to me. It's quite a brutal match.
It is. I suppose it's what you kind of come to expect from Foley and Terry Funk. Some of the bumps they're taking in this are unbelievable.
Yeah, and this would be, just thinking timeline, this would be basically the night before the Outlaws join up with Triple H and
That's
X-Pac
right.
to form the new DX, so they're right ready to really run with these guys. But to be fair, reaction way before that anyway. But I thought the teams played off each other pretty well. There's a sort of natural, it's not necessarily young versus old, because there's probably not a huge amount between the likes of Road Dogg and Mick Foley in terms of age, but it's sort of seen as established against fresh, and you're, I think, sort of positioned to think that it's the match style that gives Chainsaw Charlie and Cactus Jack the chance to actually win this.
Yeah.
And then they get quite creative with it, which I like. I a little bit looked at the card before watching this, kind of knowing this Mania would in all likelihood end up on my list. And this match, I remember thinking, I wonder if it's held up well or if this just comes across really badly, because I thought that risk was there, but I really enjoyed it.
Me too. It's really good. There's probably only one match that isn't the most entertaining. That's the what did they even call it? It's not cruiserweight, light heavyweight.
Taka Michinoku and Aguilar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
doesn't even get an entrance. Poor Aguilar.
Yeah.
Do you know who that is?
No,
Guess.
I have no idea.
It's S.A. Rios.
Oh, is it?
So 19-year-old S.A. Rios.
He was the guy that first sort of introduced Lita to
That's
the
the
world.
one. The king of Sunday Night Heat.
Yes, he was always on Sunday Night Heat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, it's not the worst match in the world. I wouldn't go out my way to watch it, but it is what it is. But it's just like I feel like the rest of this WrestleMania is just all the matches are really good.
Yeah.
Triple H, Owen Hart's really good.
Yeah, I kind of wished it had been a bit longer, but actually, when I look at it, it was, 11 and a half minutes, which isn't bad. Which tells me that when I was watching it, it probably flew by, which is usually a pretty good sign. Yeah, I wasn't sure about the whole the tag situation at the start with LOD 2000, although it's always nice to see Sonny. That didn't come across great to me. The relaunch of LOD.
Yeah, well, it's LOD 2000 because they're wearing motorcycle helmets
Yeah,
and shin pads.
yeah.
That was weird. I did
But-
like Sunny. I just think it's a flawed gimmick, a battle royal with tag teams in it. So
Yeah.
when your opponent gets eliminated, so do you. But then some guys were staying in, and Mark
Yeah.
Henry was into business for himself and just going to win the tag team belts on his own. It was a bit weird.
Yeah, a little bit of a mess, but generally a very good card and a very good show that I think achieved everything it needed to achieve.
Yeah. And is this our first JR and the King? Right. Well, certainly WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think it would be. Yeah, and I a little bit cringe at some of the King's stuff now.
Yeah.
I think I loved it when I was younger. I just thought it was hilarious, but it hasn't dated brilliantly, some of it.
Just some of the language and
Yeah. And I think we've mentioned before, I am a JR fan. I like JR. His voice, I just associate it with wrestling when I was growing up. I preferred him with Heyman. I wish that had gone on a little bit longer than it did. I thought that was a really good dynamic. I'm sure, all the lines JR's saying, he's being fed a lot of them and things like that, I've no doubt. And as soon as he says something once, he'll be told, yeah, say that every 5 minutes in every match, the people will love it. So yeah, it's just a little bit cringy and a little bit repetitive, but it didn't put me off too much during this show. There were a couple of matches where he's obviously, as soon as a Sonny's there or a Sable's there, he's going to be saying what he's saying. But yeah, it didn't ruin it for me.
he says something in the, I can't recall exactly, I didn't write it down, but he refers to Taka Michinoku coming off the top rope as like a kamikaze pilot or something like that.
Yeah, and I remember he used to have this thing with the cruiserweights, because obviously,
Brian Christopher.
yeah,
He practically speaks about him the whole match.
yeah,
Is that what you're going to say? Aye.
yeah,
We also had, talking to Brian Christopher, we had Too Cool in that Battle Royal, but I think they were called like Brian Christopher and Scott Taylor or something like that.
okay,
But that was like our first version of Too Cool.
nice.
But yeah. So that's us. That's us. That's our top 5. We've done it.
Awesome.
Any that we've not spoke about that just missed the cut for you?
There were a few. 12 I considered, because Iron Man match was something pretty memorable, and now that you've talked through the rest of the card, I think I might actually go back and rewatch some of that. 6, I ended up with 5 and 7 on my list. 6 was one I considered. I briefly, although I moved past it quite quickly, considered 3. it had the, Hogan Andre main event, which was a spectacle rather than a great match, but it also had the Savage Steamboat Classic match on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, those were the ones I kind of thought about, really. What about you?
For me, when we first talked about it, I thought 15 was a lock. I thought it would be in my top two.
Yeah.
As a young man, I absolutely loved that. I think I used to put it on and go to sleep. If I couldn't sleep, I would stick that on. When you go back to watch it, like you said earlier, my God. I mean, earlier I just popped on the Bossman Undertaker match. I can't believe they hanged the Bossman.
Yeah.
Like, it's horrendous. I don't know what they were even thinking. He probably appeared the next night on Raw.
Yeah.
Like you said, you've got the Rock Austin, but a lot of it's just rubbish. Shane McMahon v X-Pac. You've got convoluted storyline with China being reunited with DX, and then suddenly they've turned on Triple H and have turned on DX, and he's joined the corporation. It's just It's all a bit of a mess. I think this must be peak Russo time.
Yeah, no doubt.
I also considered 3 as well. I watched through quite a lot of it, and enjoyed bits and pieces of it. Some of it's quite slow.
Yeah, that was kind of what put me off as well.
I considered going back and watching 11, but I just didn't want to. Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow didn't really get me going.
Yeah, that shouldn't have. I mean, I've no issue with having the match as such. It's the position and that bigger focus on it. I just think the rest of the card was pretty poor as well.
Yeah.
I kind of feel bad for there's some great matches on some not very good Manias, which is unfortunate. Like the Austin Bret Hart match is on 13, which is a classic match, but sort of the rest of the card kind of lets down some of these shows.
What's the main event of 13? Is it Diesel
13.
Undertaker or something? No?
Is it Undertaker Sid?
Oh, you might be right, aye. I remember thinking that 13 would probably make my list because of Austin Bret, but when you watch it, oof.
Yeah.
The Rock versus the Sultan. No, it's not even The Rock, it's Rocky Maivia versus us. Awful.
Yeah.
Oh well. Hope you enjoyed those picks. If you've got your own thoughts about your top 5 of the 80s and 90s, hit us up on Instagram at Middle Aged Outlaws. Let us know what you think of our awful picks. Next time we're going to talk about our favourite or top 5 WrestleManias of the 2000s and 2010s. There's a lot. There is a lot to watch there, Adam.
Nice.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah,
20
it's
WrestleManias.
I think this one's going to be tougher. There's a lot to look at because some of this was peak fandom, but some of it I'll have seen them all, but trying to differentiate even in my head between some and other ones, I'll need to refresh my memory a bit about those.
Some of the things that I've just jotted down here, some of the things that have jumped out that I'm looking forward to watching again. 17, I think, is just considered to be, if not the best WrestleMania, then certainly up there. I don't know if that's just rose-tinted glasses from my point of view, but I'm looking forward to just sitting down and watching it all.
Yeah, it'll be good.
Hogan Rock, 18. We've got TLC matches. We've got Money in the Bank matches to look forward to. The rise of John Cena. Undertaker and Shawn Michaels back-to-back matches. There's a lot. Angle Brock. And of course, the 5-hour WrestleManias.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. Some of those are going to be tough.
Definitely. Might have to be picking out some matches rather than watching full WrestleManias.
Yeah.
And something else that we'll see through that progression will be the progression of the women's wrestling as well. which
Yeah,
is something we've
absolutely.
not really spoke about at all.
Yeah, that's definitely worth speaking about.
So yeah, we'll look forward to that in a couple of weeks' time.
Cool.
Any final thoughts?
Just to say, I fully enjoyed researching it. There's been some great manias out there. I think with the network, it's really good being able to just go back and watch whatever you want to watch and refresh your memory on. And it's interesting how some of what you watched when you were younger, your view on it, either positive or negative, can have changed by rewatching it now. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I was watching Hogan Warrior, I was thinking, I wonder how we would feel if we got the exact same match played out, but between, like Drew and Roman or something like that, and how it would be received and what it would look like.
Yeah.
And if they could captivate an audience the same way that Hogan Warrior did.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Definitely.
Anyway, thanks for that. Enjoyed that. It was great. Until next time, take care, and we shall see you for episode 9.
Cool.